Welcome. Today, we're not just looking at a timeline. We're setting out on an extensive examination of a self-made media titan.
James Robert Davis.
The American cartoonist, producer, screenwriter. I mean, the person the world knows as the creator of Garfield.
Right. And our goal here is to really study the intentional architecture of it all.
The blueprint. How this empire was actually built. We want to look past the humor and, get into the mechanics of creating a global IP.
That's the crucial distinction, isn't it? Because when you look at the sources, the biographical accounts, the business summaries, what you see isn't a story of, say, accidental success.
Not at all.
It's a carefully engineered career. We're going to be tracking the specific strategic decisions, both big and small, that let a comic strip from 1978 become the world's most syndicated comic property.
And the scale of it, it's almost hard to wrap your head around.
It really is.
We're talking about Garfield, published continuously since 1978. And as of a 2008 measurement, it was in 2,580 newspapers.
Read by an estimated 300 million people.
Daily. 300 million. That means something like 1 out of every 20 people on the planet was seeing this character every single day.
That kind of penetration, it just doesn't happen by accident. It requires flawless business execution.
It demands an infrastructure.
A huge one that can handle syndication, licensing, translation, compliance, all across dozens of international markets at the same time.
And that infrastructure is Paws, Inc., which we'll definitely get into.
We have to. But to really understand the empire, I think we have to start with the creator's own starting point.
And what really sets the stage for me is this remarkable personal connection, the link between his own life and the character's world.
You mean John Arbuckle?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Jim Davis's childhood directly inspired the foundational parts of John Arbuckle's life. You can literally trace the strip's DNA back to one specific place in Indiana.
So our mission really is to uncover not just the creative spark, but the deep-seated, meticulous intentionality behind everything Jim Davis did.
Okay, so let's begin where so many of these stories seem to start.
The Midwestern roots.
James Robert Davis, born July 28, 1945, in Marion, Indiana. And this isn't just a trivial detail, this location. It's the actual setting, emotionally and physically, for the world he was about to create.
The location is everything. I mean, when you put Davis's childhood side by side with his fictional character, John Arbuckle, the parallels are, well, they're striking, and they're clearly on purpose.
So Davis grew up on a small farm.
A small black Angus cow farm in Fairmount, Indiana. He lived there with his father, James William, his mother, Anna Catherine, or Betty, and his brother, Dave.
And John Arbuckle's backstory is practically a mirror image of that.
It is. He was also raised on a farm. He has parents who appear in the strip, and he's got a brother named Doc Boy.
Even the birthdays are the same. John Arbuckle's birthday is July 28th, just like Jim Davis.
It's so specific. It feels like John Arbuckle is this affectionate, maybe simplified caricature of Davis's own early life.
This kind of rural, slightly awkward guy trying to figure out modern life.
Right. And those rural influences, they're so deeply ingrained. They provide that simple, grounded contrast you need for Garfield's modern cynicism to really work.
The whole comedy comes from that clash. John's simple innocence against Garfield's, urban gluttonous worldview.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's also worth noting that Davis wasn't just on the farm. He was a former president of the Fairmount, Indiana chapter of the FFA.
Let's pause on that for a second. The FFA.
Okay.
For you listening who might not know, that's the Future Farmers of America. It's a huge developmental organization for young people in agriculture.
Yeah, being chapter president is a big deal.
It's not just a line on a resume. It tells you he wasn't just near the farm. He was actively engaged in agricultural leadership. That probably gave him an early sense of organization, of management.
Skills that would be crucial for Paws, Inc. later on.
Exactly. And speaking of structure, that brings us to his education, which feels like the real turning point for his whole career strategy.
He went to Ball State University, and this is the critical part. He studied both art and business.
He wasn't just chasing a creative passion.
No, he was consciously building the framework to commercialize it.
That dual education is the blueprint for Paws.
Yeah.
Right there. The ability to draw a strip, but also understand amortizations, syndication contracts, licensing rights.
He was basically building a vertically integrated company in his head before the comic even existed.
It's also just a fun little piece of trivia that one of his fellow students at Ball State was David Letterman.
Right, and he was in the Theta Chi fraternity, which again shows that involvement in organized groups.
Before we move on from his early life, we should probably trace his art back even further.
His commitment to the form was there from very early on.
Right.
While he was at Fairmount High School back in 1959, he joined the staff of the school newspaper, The Breeze.
As the art editor.
And he featured his very first comic strip there. Apparently, it was all about school life, high school characters.
And he wasn't just doodling. He drew most of the illustrations for his 1963 senior yearbook using those same characters.
It shows that the whole process, sequential art, character consistency, storytelling, was a core interest for him since he was a teenager, long before Garfield was even a thought.
Okay, and here's an essential and pretty ironic personal detail. It just highlights how much of a deliberate, calculated choice Garfield really was.
His first marriage.
To Carolyn Altacruz, they have a son together, but Carolyn, she was allergic to cats.
So the man who would build an empire on the world's most famous cat
Lived in a household where the main pet was a dog.
a dog named Molly. The irony is just, it's perfect. Because if his home life had been full of cats, you could argue his later market analysis was biased.
Right.
But the fact that his real life was the complete opposite of his career path just underlines that the choice of a cat was purely professional. It was market-driven, not personal.
He later remarried.
To Jill in 2000. She brought 2 children from a previous marriage into his life.
And through all of this, that loyalty to his roots never wavered.
No, even after Garfield was a global phenomenon, he stayed connected to Indiana. He still lives in Albany, Indiana.
Which is where he founded Paws, Inc. back in 1981. He kept that grounding that really inspired the whole dynamic of his work.
And that commitment to his home state also meant that Paws, Inc. became a really significant local employer in a smaller community, instead of being in a big media hub like New York or L.A.
Which is part of his whole unique business model.
It is.
So now we get to the really pivotal part of his career. This is where we see those art and business degrees come together in this single, highly analytical decision.
Before Garfield, he already had professional experience. He'd worked for an ad agency.
Which must have sharpened his understanding of marketing, branding, how to sell a concept.
For sure. And then in 1969, he got a job assisting Tom Ryan on the comic strip Tumbleweeds.
Which was an established, successful strip.
Exactly. So this wasn't just a job, it was an apprenticeship. He was learning the mechanics of a syndicated strip. The deadlines, dealing with editors, the consistency you need to keep readers. It gave him the technical skills.
But every creator wants their own thing. And his first attempt to go solo was a strip called Norm Nat.
Right. Davis launched it, and it ran weekly from 1973 to 1975 in the Pendleton Times. It was a big step, but it led directly to the moment of rejection that completely reshaped his career.
This is the moment where the business analysis just takes over from the creative passion.
It is. He tried to sell Norm Nat to a national syndicate. And the feedback he got wasn't just a vague no. It was surgical. It was data-driven.
The editor famously told him,
Your art is good, your gags are great, but bugs, nobody can relate to bugs.
And that single piece of feedback is basically the thesis statement for the entire Garfield empire.
Right. He could have just been defeated by that.
But instead, he treated that market critique like a set of instructions. He didn't just shelve Norm Nat. He completely changed his whole method.
He immediately shifted into strategic analysis. He started systematically studying the entire landscape of comic strips that were out there.
So he stopped asking, what do I want to draw?
And started asking, what does the market want and where is there a gap? It's textbook market segmentation.
And that analysis led him straight to Peanuts, specifically to Snoopy.
He saw that Snoopy wasn't just a beloved character in the strip, stealing scenes from the human characters. He was a commercial powerhouse.
A far bigger marketing success in terms of merchandise, licensing, public recognition than Charlie Brown himself.
Which confirmed 2 things for him. First, animals were extremely marketable IP.
And second, an animal character could actually eclipse the human protagonist in terms of commercial potential.
But then came the next layer of his analysis. Which animal to choose? Davis looked at the market and saw what he thought was an oversaturation of successful dogs.
The market was already full of famous dogs. You had Snoopy, Marmaduke. Odie would eventually join Garfield, but he was always secondary.
So Jim Davis made a deliberate, calculated business decision. He would create a cat to fill that largely untapped feline niche in the market.
It was a choice designed purely to minimize competition and maximize how distinct his character would be.
And that strategy paid off almost right away. He tested the idea not with the full Garfield strip we know, but with a kind of transitional strip called John.
Right, which ran in the Pendleton Times from 76 to 78.
And the premise was the familiar bachelor, John Arbuckle, who just happened to have this lethargic, cynical house cat, Garfield.
So the cat started out as a supporting character, almost like a test subject in the strip.
But the reaction from editors and readers was immediate and clear. The cat was the star.
Which confirmed his whole market hypothesis and led to the necessary rename and the official launch.
That strategic shift from John to Garfield was officially made on September 1st, 1977, when he renamed the strip. That was the moment the cat went from sidekick to the main focus of the entire operation.
And the national launch happened pretty quickly after that. Garfield started syndication in 41 newspapers on June 19th, 1978.
And while 41 papers is a good start, it's the speed of the growth that was just staggering. That initial momentum showed there was immediate enthusiasm for the concept from both the public and editors.
And the ultimate measure of that success, like we said, is that massive record-breaking reach. 2,580 newspapers, 300 million daily readers by 2008.
And to get there and stay there, you need more than just a talented artist. You need an administrative engine.
Which brings us back to Paws, Inc.
Paws, Inc. was founded by Davis in 1981 in Albany, Indiana, specifically to manage the huge scale of the Garfield operation.
Yeah.
It's so important for you to understand this is not just some boutique art studio.
No, it's a highly centralized global licensing and syndication hub.
Let's break down what Paws, Inc. actually does. The source material says it employs nearly 50 artists and licensing administrators.
50 people. So what does a team of 50 people do to manage one comic strip? They can't all be drawing.
No, the work is highly specialized. First, you have the artists who are maintaining the strict visual consistency that you need for a global brand.
Right.
Then you have the syndication managers. They handle the logistics of getting the strip to over 2,500 newspapers every single day.
Which is a monumental task. You're dealing with different digital formats, deadlines, contracts for different regions.
But the real complexity, and where the major revenue comes from, is the licensing arm. Paws, Inc. manages Garfield's worldwide licensing, merchandising, and the whole entertainment empire.
So if you see a Garfield plush toy in Japan or a sticker in Brazil.
Paws,
Yeah.
Inc. negotiated that deal, ensuring the quality control, the brand adherence.
On top of that, I imagine you need robust translation support.
Absolutely. The strip is often visual, but the linguistic nuances in thought balloons or John's dialogue have to be handled by translators to make sure the humor works in French or Japanese or any other language.
So Davis built a company specifically to handle the global commercial demands of the IP he created.
And that business engine got some crucial high-level guidance from an industry peer.
Davis always credited the creator of Peanuts, Charles M. Schulz, the man whose own character, Snoopy, was the subject of Davis's initial market study as a valuable mentor.
And that relationship isn't just a nice story. It led to a critical, tangible change to the core character design.
This is a fascinating detail.
While Davis and Schultz were working together on TV specials in the early 1980s, Schultz actually redesigned Garfield.
That's amazing. So Schulz, the titan of the previous generation, physically changed the design of the next generation's biggest star. What was the change, and why was it so important?
Schultz is credited with changing Garfield to his modern bipedal form.
Meaning he could stand and walk on two legs, like a person.
Exactly. And this was a critical adjustment, especially as Garfield was moving into animation and television. The change let the character perform a much wider range of physical gags and movements.
Things that are essential for visual comedy on a screen.
So that collaboration literally future-proofed the character for the expanding multimedia market. It made him more versatile, more visually appealing, just as he was making that leap from the static newspaper page to the dynamic TV screen.
It also says a lot about the professional respect between them.
It does. Davis later made a point of dispelling any rumors that Schultz resented him for Garfield's success. He confirmed it was a genuinely supportive, collaborative relationship between two giants of cartooning.
So with the Garfield brand now a commercial juggernaut backed by Paws, Inc., Davis tried to replicate the formula.
He did. He attempted to launch a second successful barnyard-themed comic strip.
That strip was U.S. Acres.
Known as Orson's Farm outside the U.S. It launched in March 1986. The concept was a direct attempt to use the Paws, Inc. infrastructure and his knowledge of farm life to create another successful animal-centric brand.
But it serves as a great example of how even strategic genius doesn't guarantee you can repeat success.
Right. U.S. Acres just failed to match Garfield's overwhelming popularity. It ended pretty quickly, on May 1st, 1989.
His assistant, Brett Koth, was credited as co-artist in its final year, but the brand never found that cultural footing or market niche that Garfield had.
The failure of U.S. Acres is really instructive, I think. It shows that while market analysis can identify a need, the actual execution, the personality, the timing, the core conflict that makes a strip relatable has to be perfectly calibrated too.
Even the master architect couldn't perfectly clone his own success.
No, but he kept diversifying. He worked with Brett Koth again on a strip based on the Mr. Potato Head toy, which ran from 2000 to 2003.
Which shows he was still trying to apply his knowledge to established IP, not just his own creations.
But the real expansion was in television and film, where Davis showed true control over his property. He didn't just license the rights away.
He was hands-on as a writer and producer, and that is so key for understanding the brand's consistency.
He personally wrote or co-wrote all of the Garfield TV specials for CBS, which aired between 1982 and 1991.
By controlling the scripts, he made sure the animated Garfield perfectly matched the tone and character he'd established in the strip.
And that control continued into the long-running series. He was the producer of Garfield and Friends, which was on CBS from 1988 to 1994.
That show was a huge success. It even incorporated characters from U.S. Acres or Orson's Farm, trying again to integrate his IP.
And his commitment continued as the technology changed. He was an executive producer on the CGI animated series The Garfield Show, and later on Garfield Originals.
And he wrote and was an executive producer for a series of CGI direct-to-video movies about Garfield. His involvement spanned decades, making sure the essence of the character was preserved as animation shifted from 2D to computer-generated.
Before we get to the final stage of his empire, there's one really surprising real-world business venture that just shows the breadth of his entrepreneurial spirit.
It goes way beyond cartooning.
From 1984 to 2001, Davis owned a fine dining restaurant in Muncie, Indiana called Foxfire's.
A completely unrelated venture, going from drawing lasagna-loving cats to managing a high-end restaurant.
And the interesting detail is that it ran successfully for 17 years. It only closed after the head chef was hired away by someone else.
Which just emphasizes his skill as a general business owner. He understood that a local business depends on specific, skilled people.
And then finally, the ultimate goal of this strategic empire was reached in 2019.
He sold Paws, Inc., the administrative and licensing core of his creation, to the mass media conglomerate Viacom.
The timing and scale of that sale are so important. Viacom merged with CBS shortly after to become Viacom-CBS, which is now Paramount Global.
So this acquisition meant that this incredibly successful, resilient, and globally recognized IP Garfield passed from the creator's hands into one of the world's largest entertainment conglomerates.
It was the final huge step in monetizing the IP. The sale proved the immense commercial value Davis had built over 4 decades.
Paramount Global didn't just buy a comic strip.
No. They acquired the entire infrastructure, the rights to thousands of strips, the design library, the licensing contacts, the talent within Paws, Inc. It completed the journey.
From a simple observation about bugs
to a corporate asset valued in the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars.
So Jim Davis's career is this blend of high-quality art and really rigorous commercial application, and you can see that balance in his influences and the recognition he got.
He was definitely a student of the masters. He cited several major cartoonists who inspired him, which shows he was always looking at the history of the art form.
His influences included Mort Walker,
known for the long-running, highly syndicated strips Beetle Bailey and Hi and Lois. That shows an appreciation for sustained, character-driven comedy.
He also acknowledged Charles M. Schulz of Peanuts, whose influence we already talked about in terms of marketing and even character design.
Then there was Milton Caniff of Steve Canyon, which represents a focus on detailed illustration and adventure, and Johnny Hart of BC, known for its unique, sometimes philosophical humor.
That's a really diverse list. It ranges from sitcoms to philosophy to adventure. It suggests Davis was absorbing techniques for structure and timing from all across the cartooning world.
Which probably helped Garfield adapt to so many different formats so well.
And the recognition he received was equally broad, covering art, television Emmys, and civic awards. It confirms his impact was both professional and cultural.
Let's start with his TV work, which really shows the quality of the animated specials he personally oversaw.
He got multiple Emmy Awards for Outstanding Animated Program. Specifically, Garfield in the Rough won in the 84-85 season, Garfield's Halloween Adventure in 86, and Garfield's Babes and Bullets in 88-89.
To have that kind of sustained success over that period in animation is pretty rare. Those awards prove that Davis and Paws, Inc. translated the strip's humor into a high-quality animated format that the industry recognized as excellent.
And on the cartooning side, he received the biggest professional honors from the National Cartoonist Society.
Which is the top organization for American cartooning.
These were substantial honors. He got the Elsie Cigar Award for contributions to cartooning in 1985 for his general impact, then the Best Strip Award in 1986.
And, most significantly, in 1989, he received the Reuben Award for overall excellence in cartooning.
Which is considered the highest honor in the field? It puts him in the same pantheon as people like Schultz and Caniff.
His standing also went beyond the professional world, with recognition from his home state of Indiana.
He received the Sagamore of the Wabash in 1988 and was named a Distinguished Hoosier in 1992. These civic awards show he wasn't just a global cartoonist, but a celebrated citizen of Indiana, a place he always invested in.
And that civic engagement often used the Garfield platform for public good, focusing on things like literacy and the environment.
He got the Indiana Arbor Day Spokesman Award in 1989 and the LVA Leadership Award in 1997.
That LVA award recognized Paws, Inc. and the Professor Garfield Foundation, which was created to support children's literacy. It used that universally known character to deliver educational content.
And his continued relevance was recognized more recently with the Inkpot Award from San Diego Comic-Con in 2016.
Acknowledging his vast contributions to the world of comics.
The final piece of this legacy involves a really big shift in his creative process and what happened to his physical artwork as a result.
In 2011, Davis completely changed his creative process. He started drawing the comics digitally, using a graphics tablet.
This change is so important for understanding the modern era of the strip. It meant that from 2011 on, the daily Garfield strip stopped existing as a physical, hand-drawn piece of art.
The process moved to a digital canvas, and that created a deep divide in his body of work.
Because of that shift, all the older, physical, hand-painted Garfield comics from 1978 to 2011,
which amounted to more than 11,000 hand-drawn strips.
Right. They all remain sealed in a climate-controlled safe, so he needed a plan for what to do with them.
And his solution, which he announced in December 2019, was to hold weekly auctions for these original physical strips.
This strategic dispersal of 11,000 pieces of art lets fans and collectors own a tangible piece of the strip's history.
And it also marks the end of the traditional art process for the franchise. It creates this fascinating dichotomy.
On one hand, the intellectual property, the rights, the brand, was sold to Paramount Global to live on forever in corporate hands.
And on the other hand, the physical artifacts from the original era of the strip were simultaneously scattered to private collectors all over the world through auctions.
So if we synthesize this incredible intentional career for you, the core insight is it's undeniable. Jim Davis's success was the result of a deliberate, calculated blueprint.
It was a fusion of innate artistic talent, which he worked hard to hone, combined with strategic, highly focused market analysis.
That decision to abandon Norm Nat based on the editor's critique that nobody can relate to bugs, that was the single most commercially insightful moment of his entire career.
It led directly to the optimized creation of a cat character designed specifically to fill an untapped market niche.
And that commercial insight was combined with exceptional operational management. He immediately created Paws, Inc., to handle the infrastructure of global syndication, licensing, and brand consistency, with a staff of nearly 50 specialists.
He approached cartooning not just as an art form, but as a massive business that needed constant evolution. He even sought guidance from peers like Charles M. Schultz to redesign his character for multimedia success.
The relevance for you is that any great, whimsical, creative idea, like a cynical cat who hates Mondays, can only scale and last for decades globally if it's supported by a solid foundation of business acumen, strategic positioning, and a willingness to adapt.
As Davis showed with his shift to digital drawing, he engineered the architect of lasagna using this perfect blend of art and commerce.
We've tracked this engineered empire right to its endpoint, the 2019 sale to Viacom Paramount Global, and at the same time, the dispersal of the physical hand-drawn strips through weekly auctions.
Which raises a compelling question about the future of these kinds of legacies.
As the intellectual property now belongs entirely to a massive, profit-driven conglomerate, and the original physical creative material is scattered across the world in private hands, what happens to the creative spirit and the original vision of Garfield? That's the final thought we'll leave you with.
Thanks for listening.